This will be a series of episodes in which the main topic will be the various stages of our journey in search of the soul. I think it's one of the most important and ever-present topics in all of our minds, so I find it absolutely fascinating to talk about the experiences of independent researchers, mediums, sensitives, or just normal people with this amazing gift who are actively engaged in direct work with other worlds. In this first episode, I want to share with you a perspective on Chantal Dejean and her life experience regarding the world beyond. Here's how she presents herself. Since I was a child, I've had the privilege of living in two parallel realities. One belonged to the world that everyone can see and touch, while the other was made of the magic that composes the finer worlds. From the realm of nature beings to the world of the departed, to the souls of my children before they were born, to the beings who serve as our guides, I enjoyed training my being to such refinement, to such beauty, so I could resonate with them and thus live them. Today, these two worlds are one and the same, making me the meeting point between the physical and the subtle, the visible and the invisible, heaven and earth. The fundamental question of this episode is, what will there be after this life? Here's Chantal's answer. The question is not just what will be after and what was before, but why did we dive into this earthly life and then return to where we came from? So, to make the answer clear, it must be seen from a specific perspective. As earthlings, we look at our life, we look at the clouds, at society, but if we change our perspective and start to read life, to observe it from the perspective of the soul, I think many things would change. We are still convinced that we are this personality, this body. In reality, it is not, but I don't want to impose a truth. I don't want to change anyone's idea. What I try to do is bear witness to something I live, and I don't want to teach anything to anyone. But in continuing to look at things from the perspective of this earthly dimension, let's say it's difficult to understand why we are here and where we are going. Since I was a child, I've had the experience of living as a soul. That was the great revelation that led me to live life in a completely different way from another perspective. When I saw myself outside of the physical body as a child, I began to have experiences. I began to realize that the body was, in fact, nothing more than a vehicle, a means of transportation, and the truth is that life belonged to what we call the soul. This life has no beginning and no end, but it's an infinite journey, and the soul, at some point, chooses to wear a terrestrial vehicle to have an experience. From our true home, we make a choice to come and experience matter in an unaware envelope, an envelope that has forgotten its origin, that has forgotten its source, and the soul is there to illuminate, to reanimate an unaware substance. Once a part of this awakening is completed, it chooses to return home. So, where do we come from? The mind struggles to understand because we have a perception of space and linear time. That is, there's a before, a place, a past, a present, and a future. The same goes for the afterlife. There's a here and a there, below and above. We should begin to observe life based on vibrations, frequencies. Life is energy, sound, light in motion with infinite variations and infinite tones, infinite densities. Everything that exists has a vibrational energy. The dimension we are in now has its own density, its own frequency, its own vibration, but there are countless other realities with different frequencies that exist. So, there are numerous realities and many worlds. I've had the fortune of interacting with what I call the world of the beings of nature, guides from other planets of the inner earth. There's not just an afterlife because it's one of these frequencies, it's a very ordinary world. It's just as real as our own. The worlds expressed in these other vibrational variations are concrete worlds, many perhaps even more concrete than ours, because consciousness is more lucid and expanded. There it's perceived that our mind is much more aware of the absolute, so they are worlds with houses, buildings created by our thoughts. Our collective or individual thoughts can shape the frequency like sound waves, so by emitting thoughts and sounds, we give shape to matter. There are buildings that seem made of light, there are houses, we have friends, a family, and we are aligned with our higher selves. What do we do in these extremely concrete worlds? We do what we love to be. Each of us has a talent, a quality, a beauty, and what we are, what we do in these subtle worlds is our talent. Our mission in these worlds is always aligned with the flow of life, meaning we don't do ego-driven work. We don't do this job to pay taxes. We don't do this because we have to. Everything is in line with the evolution of life. There are tasks to help those being born, tasks to help those departing. There are laboratories where we design the missions of incarnation. There are scientists, artists. Everything functions in service of the evolution of consciousness. Of these higher worlds, one of them is what we call the afterlife. There are infinite other frequencies, but in terms of human evolution, we remain in the spiritual body of the planet, which is what we call the afterlife. When we are born, we think we are only a physical body, that we've just arrived in the world. But why do we make this choice? When we are in the subtle worlds, we choose what physical body to have. We can choose to be a man or a woman, to be young or old, so age is determined by choice. In the subtle realms, there are no ailments. There is a perfect physical form, and there is no illness or disharmony, because we are in connection with the harmonious one. We are in connection with beauty. So, what determines the ageless nature of a soul? It's the light. How much light? How many dimensions of the divine that soul is expressing? The more evolved a soul is, the more it incorporates multiple dimensions of the divine, and thus multiple lights. On Earth, there are experiences to amplify our light, and this is the only thing the soul desires, to become more and more like the divine and to incorporate more and more divine vibrations. We reincarnate until our gaze is completely clear, open to who we truly are. For the soul, there is no longer a separation between here and the hereafter, because in all subtle worlds, the here and the hereafter converge. It's simply a perspective of the mind that separates, tends to see things as separate. But from an inner and soulful standpoint, the hereafter is an internal vibration within us. So we reincarnate until our consciousness has united all the separations, all the opposites, and become soul. Here on earth, we think of Buddha or the great teacher that was Jesus, but for them, there is no more separation between the self, one's own self, and the divine. How can we explain the concept of the enemy age in terms of years, in terms of evolution? In the subtle worlds, there is no time, no minutes, no subtle soul clock. Everything operates in terms of the quality of consciousness shifts. An evolved ancient soul is one who has dissolved the veils that separated her from the mysteries of God. Now it's important to introduce the concept of the here and now. In this life, we always wait, or at least, when we are in special conditions, we always wait for that moment, that event that will make us change or give us the opportunity to become something else. Perhaps we must find that event within. We have all experienced the fear of dying, but why, even though the soul knows there's nothing to fear, do we have so much fear of dying? It's not the soul that is afraid. The soul has no fear because when we have those moments of joy, moments of peace, the fear disappears because we are connected to it, which is the soul. So, the part of us that is afraid is the egoic part, the part of the matter of our body. When a person believes that there is nothing beyond what the five senses can perceive, that matter continues to live as flesh and bone with the mental form, so it will continue to live in fear. For the mind, for the flesh, there is nothing beyond itself. There is nothing else. So we need to change the matrix of matter, like in the famous movie Matrix. At the end of the film, he is reborn. He has abolished the concept of death, the concept of matter, and of reality. He only sees the codes in the end. This is what we came to do, to modify from within what doesn't exist, which is death, the finite world. It's up to us to enlighten the unconscious matter, change its matrix, its codes to bring the true message that everything is energy, everything is infinite. The movie Matrix, for me, is a masterpiece that explains this concept of coming to transcend the matter of its codes. What should we expect in the very first moments after what we call physical death, when a soul leaves the physical body? In the moment when a soul departs from the physical body, it first needs to realize that it is not just a physical body. This realization typically occurs in the famous 3 days, which are based on the subtle anatomy of the dissolving threads that connect us to the physical and etheric bodies. These 3 days are also crucial for the soul to rediscover itself as a subtle being, a being of light. In the initial moments, the soul will have a strong need for this. If this process of self-discovery and mourning the separation from the physical body occurs in a familiar place, It will be much easier for the soul because the vibrations of the family home will lead it through this transition more serenely and quickly. In such a familiar place, the soul will find itself and peace. If, on the other hand, a person passes away in a sterile place, devoid of affection and rituals, it becomes much more difficult for the departing soul to reconnect, find joy, and adjust to the subtle realms. What does a person who is in some way departing, on the verge of death, experience? What do they think? And what can we say to someone who is losing a loved one? What I do is to create a bridge, a ferry for the soul to navigate this transition into the invisible, so I can tell you what the soul thinks as it leaves the physical body. It's a very subjective experience, and I don't have direct perceptions of a person's thoughts, but I can observe and perceive that the soul first regains its expanded consciousness after being confined in a small and narrow place. There's a split second where the person reviews their entire life in reverse. After that, a kind of journey begins. The person starts to remember what came before birth, and doubts start to dissolve, revealing incredible beauty. Often we view death as the negative aspect of life, as we leave behind the people we love. But in reality, it's the opposite. The difficult moment for the soul is birth, because in birth, we forget everything and lose our loved ones, our home, our consciousness, our memories. We forget everything until we awaken to consciousness. It's like coming back home, and the beauty of that moment is immense because the person is rediscovering themselves at a subtle level. In the mentioned 3 days, there's a sort of kiss between heaven and earth because they are no longer separate. Many people are departing at this moment for various reasons, one of which is to serve and assist in the subtle realms because they need labor. It's also to create more bridges between the earthly world and the celestial realm. Now what happens when someone leaves us and we go looking for them elsewhere? Before, we didn't care about the elsewhere because we had our loved ones, home, car, and job here. But when a loved one departs, people often seek them, whether in a more earthly way or by looking to the heavens at the stars. This helps open the doors for people to stop associating death with negativity and instead see it as a passage between worlds. The times we are living now are providing assistance to humanity in dissolving the concept of death. So, I expect more and more people like me. Many will see the subtle realms with ease, and the distance between dimensions will become much thinner. Who knows, there may even be an opening of the planet Earth. Perhaps there are other peoples, other brothers and sisters.